Hi, in this video, we're going to study the social welfare laws when implementing a quota. The social welfare laws is actually this purple region here, and I'm going to show you why. So this is the social welfare laws, all of that area. And as you can see, it's much greater than the quota. So the quota only had a social welfare laws of A and B, but now we are going to be adding this region to it too. Long story short, that's because there's no tax revenue. But let's look at it in detail. So bear with me 1 second, and I will add some letters. Okay, to work out the social welfare loss, you need to work out the social welfare initially. So before a quota, and then compare it with social welfare after the quota. The method that I'm going to use to do that is I'm going to say that social welfare is the sum of the welfare of all the parties in this economy. So that could be the consumers. So I'm going to take their consumer surplus plus their producer surplus. If there's any government surplus or third-party surplus, that will be added there too. In this case, I think it's just the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. All right, so consumer surplus, if you remember, we want to take a look at three things. We want to take a look at the difference in the price that they actually are willing to pay, which is shown by the demand curve for the domestic country, the price that they actually pay, which was P1 but is now P2, and the units that they are able to purchase. Okay, so initially the price was P1. The units that they are able to buy is where the demand curve meets the price. They're able to buy that from the domestic country as well as the world. So they were able to buy Q4 and they were willing to pay everywhere on this demand curve. So as a result, they get a really, really big consumer surplus of all of this area here in green. Or I'm going to just use letters. That's my preferred method when it comes to exams. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Right, producer surplus. We are going to do the three method approach as well. So producer surplus, we take the difference between the price that they sell and they get to keep. In this case, it's the same, and the price that they are willing to sell, which is shown by the supply curve for all the units that they sell. Now, when we talk about producer surplus, remember that we want to talk about domestic producer surplus. So we're actually going to not look at the supply of the world. We're going to look at the domestic supply. So they were selling at P1 and they were willing to sell on this domestic supply curve. And even though the consumers were able to buy Q4, the domestic producers only sold Q1. That's where the supply curve meets the quantity there. So we are going to look at the difference between P1, Q1, and the S domestic. We're talking about domestic surplus, so that will just be H, giving us a total social welfare of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. So very high levels of social welfare. Let's look at the example after the quota. Long story short, the quota ends up raising prices. And it does. Okay, let's take it in stages. So the consumer surplus 2 is going to be the difference between the price that they are now buying, which is P2. How much do the consumers buy? They can't buy Q4 anymore. The price has gone up. So you're going to have a contraction in the demand curve. That's where the demand curve meets that price. So they are buying Q2. So they are buying Q2 and they are prepared to pay on the demand curve. Anyway, the combination of all of that is going to give us A and B only. And for the producers, they are selling at P2. the domestic producers used to be selling Q1, but now this is where the domestic supply curve is able to produce at P2, which is Q3. So they are able to sell Q3. Remember, the demand is much higher than that, so they can sell all of it. And the supply curve. So all of this is going to be area C and H, giving us a total social welfare of A, B, C, and H. Now we compare what social welfare has done. We're going to be able to figure out, is there a welfare gain? Is there a welfare loss? So the change in social welfare. So we take a look at the new one minus the old one. So if I were to show you all the working out, we're doing this one minus all of this. We will get 2A, they lost, D, they lost, E, they lost, F, they lost, G. So that's that initial area that I was showing you before in purple. All of this area here has been lost. This is the social welfare loss due to a quota. And the long story short explanation for that is the quota, because it raises prices and reduces quantity purchased, it reduces consumer surplus by a lot. And yes, it increases domestic producer surplus, but not by as much. So domestic producer surplus doesn't increase by as much. Okay, so if you were to compare this to a tariff diagram, technically the quota is causing more of a social welfare loss, so quota is more harmful. With a tariff, you don't lose this area here. You reclaim that area because you tax it back. So this is usually reclaimed in a tariff, and this is the tax revenue. So the quota causes a larger social welfare loss because it causes the same increase in price, the same overall decrease in quantity that the consumers are buying, the same expansion in the domestic production, but it doesn't reclaim this area that it did with the tariff. Anyway, I hope you like this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. And thank you very much for watching.